after. Okay, so I'm just going to record this to the computer. Did you all get a message or no? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to get started slowly, and then hopefully more students and maybe even faculty will join. So it is a great pleasure to have Assistant Professor Alexandros Sigaras with us. He's of course of Greek descent, as you can tell from his last name. So Professor Sigaras started his, I always like to give a little bit of background about the education just to get, the students, give them some ideas as how you get, to this kind of area of study. So he started with a Bachelor's of Science in Informatics. Actually, he received it from the University of Piraeus, which is, in Athens, in Attica, I should say. So this was an Information Systems track degree. He then moved to New York, where he did his Master's in Science in Computer Science at Columbia University. And so today he's actually an assistant professor of research in physiology and biophysics and research in computational biomedicine at Weill Cornell Medicine in New York. And so he's also director of the AI XR lab. So he'll be talking about that today as well. He basically developed software solutions for the Englander Institute for Precision Medicine and Institute for Computational Biomedicine, with projects spanning over healthcare system design and pipeline design for computational genomic analysis. His research interests focus on translational artificial intelligence in medicine, especially personalized medicine, which he'll be focusing on today, leveraging multimodal health data and using new emerging technologies, including augmented and virtual reality, such as HoloLens, MetaQuest, and Google Glass. And so we'll probably, be discussing a little bit on all of those different areas today. And so it's a very exciting, and as I mentioned in the beginning, it's very timely to be receiving this lecture, in consideration of, all of this sort of whirlwind of information we've been getting regarding, AI, ChatGPT-4, where we are at today. And, the excitement and the huge potential of this very powerful tool. And so it's very nice to, actually get some insight from someone, as I said, from the inside, and who has expertise in this field too, that we can have a really exciting discussion afterwards as well. So I'm going to hand over the mic to you and let you get started. Before I do that, I will I'll actually allow you to share your slides because I have not done that yet. So you should be able to do that now. So thank you very much for being with us today, and we look very much forward to your lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Polisidis, for the warm introduction and your kind words. It is an absolute pleasure being with you, even remotely, today to share some of our work in the field of artificial intelligence and medical extended reality on precision medicine. Today, we're going to be delving into a lot of acronyms and a lot of perhaps unknown words, but the idea of this lecture is to inspire you and give you a sense of what is happening in the field and some of the work that's being done here in the United States, and then spark your interest and see what can be done next or what to expect next in the field. So as Alexia mentioned earlier, it would be an amiss not to address the elephant in the room, that is generative AI, or GPT-4 in healthcare, that has taken us by storm. And I'm putting here a couple of words that you might have heard or read in the news or have tried it yourself. Things such as the ChatGPT, Google's Bard, Microsoft's Bing Copilot, Midjourney, DALL-E, and all of that are things we're going to be talking on today. And for people that haven't really tried it, I wanted to give an example of how this actually works. And what better way to do this than have it write an introduction to address you? So I asked it to write me an introduction to address a college class of students on a guest lecture of topics of pathophysiology in the evening. And why not sprinkle some Greek words just for flair? This is the GPT-4 model from ChatGPT that was trained as of yesterday. So here you'll see in real time how this LLM models are actually working. So it says, good evening, esteemed professors, academics, and students, throws a little bit of a Greek word there, just, to sprinkle a little bit of stuff. And then as it goes through, it's trying to discuss the topic about pathophysiology and how our understanding has come to it. And you will see it using just a beautiful way to define what pathophysiology is, and names Hippocrates, how can you, the father of medicine, and talks a little bit about the know thyself quote, and talks a little bit about how physiology is one of the roots of pathophysiology, and talks about what pathos means and physiology, right? So for those of you who are Greek, these are not unknown words. These are, very straightforward, and talks about inflammation and phlegmony. And I was really surprised in terms of like, it keeps on spitting really interesting thoughts in just the prompt. This is recorded in real time. I did this morning so that we have the freshest of the model, right? And you'll see talking a little bit more about what are the association. There's a little bit of Greek flair as well. And then it shows with like an Escharistopoli, kind of like a weird way to put and say thank you, and just starts. Now, aside from ChatGPT, there's also other tools. I asked Midjourney, generative AI on image creation, to create me a university lecture in Greece in a classroom setting discussing topics in pathophysiology, and boom, it let along create that just in a couple of seconds. And it's very interesting how AI has come into play. Now, having given you a taste of AI, I wanted to ask you if you've had already tried tools such as augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. And what I would encourage you to do, since we're just a crowd that we're doing things over Zoom, if you have a phone, just scan the QR code and vote, and let's see in real time how people have tried it. So I'm going to try this with you, and obviously I'm biased because I've already tried it. So the moment that you open that link, it should prompt you, and as you go ahead and enter, you will see the results over there. So if you have a phone, try it. If not, you could raise your hand or put it in the chat, and we can move on. And just to define the field of medical extended reality, as FDA names it, it is essentially a combination of a lot of things, a lot of acronyms, as I said in the beginning. There's the mixed reality that combines the physical world and the digital world, and there are some terms such as augmented reality, what is augmented virtuality, and virtual environments. And basically, I would say the medical extended reality is a superset of any of these devices that bring the digital and real together in the context of medicine. So we're going to be talking a lot of that in this lecture today, and we're going to be seeing live examples of how this is being used in medicine. Then just to have a definition on precision medicine, one quick and to the point definition would be that it is the right treatment for the right person at the right time. So a lot of things have to be right. What kind of treatment is precision medicine? So I'll give you an example, which is also our moral compass of how we navigate here, how we use technology in Weill Cornell Medicine. So here's a story of Irene Price. She's a patient that was diagnosed with bladder cancer, followed in 2009 all standard of care treatment options, went through chemo, through all of the radiotherapy, through the whole whirlwind of battling cancer. And actually she won. And the reason why I'm saying it was a pivotal point back in 2014 that she was ready to call it quits and reach out to her clinician, Dr. Nanos. She was running out of options of what would be standard of care. And Dr. Nanos, her clinician, suggested she try precision medicine. So what we did in the Precision Medicine Institute is we analyzed her genome, and we saw that she had a gene, HER2, that was amplified. So this is a mutation commonly found in breast cancer. And there was a drug, I think Herceptin, that was FDA approved, again, in breast cancer. Now, what Irene had was bladder cancer. So what she did was, with her clinician, do an FDA off-label use and was treated with Taxol and Herceptin. And since 2014, the cancer has gone into remission and she's now cancer-free. She's now a survivor. So stories like Irene's and stories like Rhonda's that was battling with uterine cancer and she's also a survivor inspire us of how we could use this bleeding edge technology to find the right treatment for the right person, tailor the data and the knowledge to the therapy and the patient that it is tailored on at the right time, meaning that it doesn't take forever. It has to be addressable when time, for example, in cancer is of essence. Now, obviously, and this is a very old slide, you have been focusing on the large growth of data, of big data. And it would be amiss not to mention that how this has happened also in the hospitals in the US and also in Greece. And there was a projection about what would be by 2020, the predictions and how big the data would have increased. Fast forward to today, the biggest contributor and predictions in a couple of years from now is that genomics is going to overtake any kind of data collection in the world. So instead of saying data is astronomical, today we should actually start saying the data will be genomical to indicate how big the size would be. It's going to be 2 to 40 times more than the astronomical data collected today. And partially the reason of that is our availability of next generation sequencing technologies and the drop in the cost of how it is to scale and do medicine, tailored medicine across a whole population. Now, we have big data. Why do we use medical extended reality or XR? What do we do with it? So one example, or 4 of them, of how we use it at Cornell is to understand big data. So we use it as a data visualization option to visualize. So for example, on the left-hand side, we have a protein structure both on VR and in mixed reality at the bottom with the HoloLens. And on the top right, we have a cancer gene drug network. The green pill-shaped ones are the FDA-approved drugs. The red balls are cancer genes. We're going to be talking a little bit about this a little bit more. And the bottom right is just to give you an example of transcriptomics and specifically single cell data. So each little ball represents a cell. And we have a technique called DropSeq that looks at the expression levels in RNA, and the person navigating just speaks a gene and it lights up using things such as principal component analysis to allot them in space. So the way that we use XR is basically to augment our bandwidth on transitioning on that data and to make sense, one of the ways. Now, one of the challenges is how do we get to that big data that we generate at this point, and we know that it is increasing, to mine it and make and convert it into knowledge, and how do we convert that knowledge into action? Clinicians often ask, what is the things that I need to do for my patients, right? So there's so much information out there on PubMed or other sources, and how do I distill that? How do I tailor it to come up with a course of action that my therapy for my patient? And we saw a little bit of examples of AI, and one would say, isn't AI just enough? Like, can we ask ChatGPT to figure this out? Well, let's look at the 2 examples, and for the people that are keen of AI, they should have caught it already. So here's the thing, know thyself. I'm Greek and I'm thinking, well, Hippocrates has done many things, but perhaps not that. So if you ask Plato, it was Socrates who said, know thyself. If you ask Diogenes the Laertius, it would attribute it to Thales. If you ask Eratosthenes or Pausanias, they would point to Phimonoe. Phimonoe was the daughter of Apollo and the first Pythia, or the Shear, right? So you can attribute it even to a daughter of a god, but definitely not Hippocrates. So one of the challenges that generative AI is, it is prone to illusions. And although it might be very impressive, there's pitfalls with accuracy, right? Also in the picture on the right-hand side, cool. Although I would say, I don't know why students are facing each other on a lecture. It doesn't really make sense. But also look at this. It's infamous, like there was a picture about a Pope that had the hands, and this is Mid-Journey V5. So it still needs some work. Impressive to put it in a few seconds, but also the faces look a little bit off, don't you think? So there are a lot of things that, AI can do, but can it do it well? And should we trust AI, or should we, test AI, and how can we use it in a way that it is meaningful for us? I don't know if you read this morning. So there was this very interesting opinion in the New York Times about the blue pill and the red pill. If you have read or seen the Matrix, it's very interesting article from the Yuval Harari, and it talks a little bit about the challenges with ChatGPT and what our expectations are today, and how do we navigate that sea of information or misinformation. So I'd love for you to take a look and let us know at some point, what is your perspective on AI? Should it be in the service of humanity? Should it be working on different ethics? What are the rules of operating AI towards humanity and benefiting that? Now, AI isn't just generative AI. There's, I would call it, traditional or like machine learning or convolutional neural networks. And we've done this in the past at Cornell quite a while. So for example, this is, to give you an example, a taste of how this can look at H&E slides in pathology. And here, just to name a point, we're using, in this column, you see molecular pathologist having annotated an area where he or she thinks that tumor exists, that there is cancer. And this is the AI actually going through and doing a really good job. Now, the way that this works is that there is a combination of both AI and human, and there's learning from people, not just a blind learning from consuming information, but being instructed and being validated, right? And here's another example. This again, in pathology and radiology, so this is, for example, on prostate cancer. A typical course of treatment would be for someone with prostate cancer, they would have to get a biopsy, and that biopsy would have to be analyzed, and the pathologist would tell if there is tumor or not. So before, they would take a radiology image, an MRI, prostate MRI. So we're trying to see how we can prevent taking a biopsy, or when to know when to take a biopsy, just by looking at the radiology images. So there's an AI model that we developed at Cornell. This is an image of the prostate area, and it would say exactly if it is benign or cancer, if it is low or high risk. So there are tools that we use in medicine today, not generative AI, but are helpful enough. And one of the common themes, at least that emanates in the service of healthcare, is we're just going to need a little bit more than AI. We're going to need the human factor to validate, to bring that trust. We need the clinician to assess that this is indeed matching the standard of care, and we don't blindly ask for problems to be solved. Now, I'm going to be stepping more away from the AI for a little bit in this lecture. I'm going to be talking about the human factor, and we're going to be evaluating some projects on three different verticals. One, on the context of care. And this is Dr. Andreopoulou in the beginning of COVID, and some of the project that we did that she gave a lecture not a while ago. We're going to be talking the sense of research and new discoveries that we've done. And this is similar to what I was showing you before on the big data journey. And we're going to be seeing it also as a model to teach the future of medicine. So let's tap on care first, and let's see what is available in care to our doctors of today, right? So how do we use mixed reality to treat our patients and to provide better care for them? And some of the slides are actually not leading edge. These were done at the beginning of the pandemic. So realizing this is 3 years old when the pandemic was starting, it was from April 2020. So in the ICU, one of the challenges that we had, obviously, the pandemic took everyone by storm. Cornell being at the center and in Manhattan was affected greatly. And we wanted to bring every single bit of technology that could augment the capabilities of our clinician and our care team. So this is Cynthia, moments before storming in. And we were evaluating it seconds ago with Dr. Weir, the director of our medical intensive care units at the Lower Manhattan Hospital. And what David is wearing there is a HoloLens. It's a mixed reality device. And what does this device enable David to do? He could see additional information. So this is me wearing the device. We're doing a quick check to see, he wanted to see both perspectives of the remote care physician, but also the people that were on the front line to provide additional assistance. So one of the reasons behind that was we had one of our primary care experts, Dr. Plataki, that was focused on ARDS. ARDS stands from acute respiratory distress syndrome that happens when you have extreme COVID in the ICUs. And Maria was specializing in ARDS in obese, in conjunction with obesity as a comorbidity. So, and that was the most vulnerable population that we would lose, that would lead to, a dire prognosis. So Maria had a fractured leg at the beginning of the pandemic and could not be on the MICU. And we're trying a way to get her insight while we were treating our patients. And we wanted to have first eyes on the front lines. So with David and the team, we started using it as a tool to do virtual rounds in the ICU, and how we could have like a task force that would immediately be able to triage the situations and bring everybody from remote that was split. Let's say someone was, one of our challenges was in the ICU, clinicians would get sick. There were no vaccines, there was nothing at the beginning. So the moment that they got sick, they had to be benched, right? Provided that they weren't progressing with dire consequences, but they wouldn't be able to contribute. So this tool was a way of, even though they were at home and they were isolating, they could still contribute and save other people's lives. So this is just a quick journey on the stuff that we did during the pandemic. Benefits on that: preserving masks at the beginning of the pandemic, having a direct way of using telemedicine, the silver lining that we saw in the beginning of the pandemic, but also being able to offer insight from anywhere in the world you would be, whether you were in Brooklyn or in the other side in Greece, you were able to assist people on the front lines. Another exciting project that we did was with Dr. Andreopoulou, whom you met in the previous lecture. Eleni is the director of our breast cancer and clinical research program, and we were discussing how we could use this to benefit our patients that were receiving chemo. So this is in the DHK building, the newest building here that we have at Cornell, and we wanted to use it as a way to decongest the room. The fear of having our patients in area where they are immunocompromised, our most vulnerable population, we definitely didn't want to expose them to any risk of getting COVID. So what we did was the clinician was on site and all the remote care team was remote. And we created this idea of a digital twin. So what you see here on the bottom right corner is the medical records of the patient. On the top right, you see Eleni's PA, Jinin, who was actually pregnant at the time and was a high risk to bring her on site, being able to assist in care while chemo was taking place. So Dr. Andreopoulou was able to see patient after patient after patient, and as she was going in, she would be able to see their medical records and have a direct dialogue, but also keep all the notes and having all the digital and all the physical take place at the same time. So obviously the biggest benefit was protecting our patients. The second benefit was productivity. Eleni didn't have to type in any notes on her computer. She could go and spend time and care for our patients, and the whole team, the whole support network would be able to talk and contribute to the discussion. And whether it was a radiologist or a surgeon, there would be an immediate discussion of what the action plan would be. Now, switching a little bit gears from care to discuss about research, and this is work that we have been doing for almost a decade now. This is Dr. Elemento, the director of the Precision Medicine Institute, with two of his then PhD students, Katie and Neil, discussing how a specific prostate cancer network, particularly they're pointing at this blue square that is a transcription factor called ERG, can be inhibited by one of the drugs called dexamethasone. And this is where we're using AI and specifically random forest to predict which drug would be more effective in such a network. And the idea there was to see how we could visualize that information. So visualizing networks is not, new. It's not a medicine thing. It is actually a computer science or a math-related issue. And visualizing medical networks, for example, cancer gene interactions, is pertinent to understand how a particular drug can affect a particular transcription factor or gene. And one of the things that we wanted to see is what were the physical and the digital boundaries to what we were building. So as we were embarking on that journey, we were looking at ways. So here I'm using voice commands to control physics rules. So from Newtonian, I'm bending a little bit the rules of how things should be, generated and whether they should fall down or not. But we also spend some time to have that sense of seeing the digital and having the same reference, right? Not necessarily from the same vantage point. So this is with one of our summer students with Sophia that we were brainstorming many years ago of how when we look at a drug, I think that was on the Cetron, can I actually hold something purely digital? And if I point at it and I put my hand, is where I'm pointing the same where you are looking at, right? So are we getting the same reference, and can this can I open a portal on bringing that digital data into the real world? And this, we decided to take it for a spin on our tumor board. So tumor board is a roundtable of clinicians, of computational bioinformaticians, of molecular pathologists, surgeons, every medicine's, let's say, finest team from all the disciplines would aggregate and discuss what can we do to better care for our patients. And Cornell is actually across the continent. So we have one medical campus in New York, that's the main one. And we have also the main campus in Ithaca and in Roosevelt Island here in New York. But we also have another medical campus in Doha in Qatar. So we started seeing how this medical metaverse could be formed in a way of visualizing the data from the other side of the world. So this was an early attempt that we did, and Carson was that red bold head in the middle of nowhere, floating together with the networks. And you might say, Alex, that's not too impressive, considering that this was back in 2016 when there was no word about Metaverse and things like that before. I think it was interesting, and we focused less on how Carson or I would look, and more on how the data would be represented in an accurate way. But throughout the journey from 2016 to today, we started looking at how these avatars would be. And again, we never spent much on something that we expected companies like Microsoft or Meta or Apple, now rumored to be bringing a device this June, would make these avatars. We focused on how that information would be and whether these visual cues of where someone is looking at could be relayed. Then you see the area where it's glowing. It's where people are focusing or are looking at. And again, this is just an example of what holograph is. It's one of our projects that we're trying to support and is already freely available. Another project to just give you a taste of how both XR and AI are blending is Protein XR. So what is this project? In a typical precision medicine report, this is the results from our exact one. This is exome sequencing, so 22,000 genes, genomics, focusing on the exon regions for our cancer patients. Here we have grade 4 brain glioblastoma patient. And this would be a typical report that they would receive. So here is the epidermal growth factor receptor and chromosome 7 and position. And basically what we see is that there is a point mutation basically from a G to an A, right? These are the two alleles. And we're looking that there is an amino acid change that is in position 289, and you'll see it here. And it basically moves from alanine to threonine. So that G to A changes from alanine to threonine and is causing that mutation to occur. Now, here's the interesting thing. EGFR in that position is what we call a hotspot, or commonly occurring mutation across a population of our cancer patients. So what you see in this diagram below is from our CBio portal. Initially developed at Memorial Sloan Kettering and Cornell and Harvard with Dana-Farber have been contributing to that, and people from all over the world. It's the biggest repository for genomics data for cancer. We're looking at this position, and it has multiple ways from going from alanine to all the other amino acids, is really a hotspot, meaning it occurs. And there's a drug called gefitinib that inhibits that position, and it's perfect for that patient, right? So basically, precision medicine delivers that insight. Now, how do we visualize this not on the genome level, but on the proteome level, right? So how does this product, like a protein, fold in a way that we could visualize it? So this is from what I was showing you earlier, and this is a very early attempt for me trying to play Tom Cruise in Minority Report and use my hands to just expand like an amino acid representation and switch to the secondary or tertiary structure. And then from all the different colors that represent amino acids, switch to the hotspots, what we were seeing before, but now in 3D being immersed into the world, and just tap on the mutation and see that, oh, it is actually there. That is a hotspot. And also look at what knowledge we have about this from any molecular pathologist that has signed out a case for clinic and has some insight about that. Now, from that, as we were playing across the years and exploring, we were looking at how this information should it be portrayed. So this is now hiding behind a cubicle. And this is how we were exploring what we could do in the real world and the digital. But also, one of the things that we developed was this precision medicine knowledge base. It's a website that you can go, pmdb.weillcornell.edu, and you can ask the bot for a specific example. So I'll show you this. And this is AI that we trained many years ago before generative AI. And let me see, I have an issue with a video? I hope not. Huh. There's a glitch. So I'll explain what this does. So basically, you're asking it, tell me more about brain glioblastoma or BRCA1 genes. And what it has is similar like ChatGPT, but with voice. It has been trained to fetch knowledge from that knowledge base, right? And tells you that the treatment options directly. And oh, hold on. I can scroll about it, but it doesn't want to play. Interesting. Well, anyway, so here are some of the results as I'm scrolling through it, right? And the question is, how does it know about brain glioblastoma? It's not something that we commonly use. So if you ask Siri or Alexa or Google Assistant, whatever your AI assistant, it doesn't understand medical terminology. So one of the interesting things that we did here was we trained a custom acoustic model with our clinicians to understand that. And we used everybody's accent and voice in order to tailor that so it understands me with a Greek accent. It understands, different accents from all across the world, and basically it understands how we announce and pronounce genes and not how a robot would. So that is Protein XR. Now, switching to projects and research, right? We have been thinking of all the digital and all the visual stuff and computational, and it would be amiss to not to think of how we visualize the wet lab, not just the dry lab, the future. So I'm going to be taking you on a journey of MR Lab, where we bring our workflows into real life. So this is a project basically that can do well three main things. One is accessing information. So we want to see that John Doe is John Doe, and we didn't get the wrong sample, and the wrong patient gets the wrong diagnosis, right? We have to do this, the right treatment, the right person, the right time. The second part is how we can streamline processing of samples. So for example, this is a centrifuge, the blood centrifuge that separates the white blood cells with the red blood cells. And we're thinking, and we were observing this, that a lab technician would, put their gloves on, conduct the experiment, take their gloves off, and go and write it down in the computer and transcribe it. And we would see that glove off and on happening so many times. And we have a good glove supplier. That's not the problem. The problem is that it's like you're focusing on doing a specific task and then you pause it to do it. And it's like we're trying to do two things in two different worlds. And we're thinking, how can we merge these together? How can I just put the sample in, hit go, and have that automatically be transcribed? And the third part that we wanted to see is how we can store these samples and effectively retrieve them. So these are a -80 freezer that stores DNA and RNA samples. And basically we need that low temperature to store and keep the grade of DNA and RNA intact so that it doesn't, as the temperature rises, denature. So the challenges were, as I open the fridge or the freezer, I don't want it to spend more than X seconds, because then the temperature will rise, the alarm will sound, and you won't know, you will have to wait and add to that workflow. So separate from these, we also looked at our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, on how we can operate and train people, especially during the pandemic. How could we train and onboard new people that were working on staggered shifts, and you didn't have a senior colleague telling you what to do because you weren't allowed to have at that time more than X amount of people in the lab. So here it's telling you how to plug it in, how to turn the switch on, and it goes step by step in a hands-free kind of element. You can say next step, you could just look at it, and it shows you images and videos, and you can just press a button as it shows here to operate. This is turned on. And as you go through that, it shows you, how to press specific things. And I'll just skip of that, but you get the idea how this works. And some of that we published back in 2019 before the pandemic started. And we wanted to show our molecular pathologists how this actually works. So we created this augmented reality inspired poster. And I think we were just trying to explain people a prop, and I think we put the protein structure there just because we could. But the idea was to convey how this could be used, especially during the pandemic, to offer remote assistance, similar things that I was talking about before in the ICU, to offer training, how all these elements could increase the productivity of the lab, and how do we visualize lab of the future. And things that we see and what we measure right now is ways to augment our productivity. So these are some of the workflows. So on the top right, we have a robotic machine that does all the extractions. On the top left, we have a slide scanner, the centrifuge that you saw. On the bottom right, we have training for how to disinfect headsets. So you see HoloLenses and Quest, and you can just look at that and we'll activate a video and telling you how to place it in the UVC decontamination kit, and so on. So let me try to move on. And this is some of the work that we did with the students at Cornell Tech that are focused on computer science. And this is just one of the workflows, right, of what I wanted to show you, like seeing it all together. So I scan the sample, I say store, I'm looking, this just went away, and now it tells me where I should be going at. So it's like a GPS, if you may. So instead of Google Maps or Waze, basically it has this arrow that tells you where to go in the lab. So it walks us through as the person is holding the sample that has been processed to guide them through the storage that I was showing you before. And you'll see now Haye tapping on that storage, and the shelves and the racks and all of that will be popping out. So the green means there's space, the orange means there's less, red is forget about it. And as she taps on the racks, you'll see the idea of a rack coming out before you even open the freezer and the temperature drops, right? So then you could select a box, and as you select the box, then the box grid will come up. So this is more than 3 dimensions. One would argue that you would have to traverse in terms of data. So I think she has chosen box 1443, and here are areas where that box, as soon as she opens the door, would be available for her. And that's just to give you a quick glimpse of MR Lab and some of the things that we do with research. Now, when it comes to teaching, there are things that we could use virtual reality. There are things that we could use mixed reality. So here's an example of what we did during the pandemic to hold these lectures, similar to how we have this one in Zoom, but like a little bit more in the metaverse in per se. So this is with some of my students in Cornell Tech that we had this meetings, quick show of hands who has done this or who knows that, and so on. And things that we've done across the years with using tools. So this is basically going through with some researchers from Cornell in New York and in Qatar, talking about amino acid changes. And here's an app called Nanome. I think here we're trying to mutate COVID, and we're trying to change its representation. Here are some examples of using a platform called Spatial that we discuss a concept of docking. So on the right, you see a protein structure, on the left, you see a drug and where it goes and binds. And this is Olivia and me and one of our students discussing of how this would be effective. I was showing you before the idea of workrooms. And generally, we have been using this from time to time in computational biomedicine, right? Because the way that we absorb information, it could be virtual, it can be multidimensional. We could just grab and visualize things on our own terms and bring the tangibility that we want. And we have been discussing also with a team of how the future of work would look like. So we were having this, I think back in 2019, the person that now manipulates the drug is name is Gary Schwartz from NBC, and we're trying to explain him concepts of the central dogma, right? The DNA to RNA to proteins, and try to explain concept things such as docking, right? And he asked to do this interview, and we said, well, let's not do an interview in Zoom. Let's do it in the metaverse. If we're going to talk about the metaverse, you should experience it. So this is some elements from that interview and that journey, where the peers joining from anywhere in the world. So we had at that time people from New York in different locations, in Qatar and in Los Angeles in California, all chiming in the roundtable from anywhere in the world. It's really remarkable what you can do now with the mixed reality and virtual reality, right? As technology becomes better and better. Now, before I close the talk, I'm going to talk about the Doctors of the Future and what we're doing. So this is with our emergency department of how we teach the future of medicine, how we teach them doing intubation. So this is Dr. Shanner, he's a resident here at Cornell. And what you will see here, we're doing this pilot of our mannequins. So then we have pediatric and others. And she's wearing that mixed reality headset. And on her right-hand side, Dr. Basar, Neil is telling her, and if you see at the very top, he's annotating something. So this is his view on his computer here. And he's circling areas that now Dr. Schenner will see. So the idea of intubation, basically passing on a tube through an airway, right, is we're thinking how we can train and do that in a remote fashion, right? So here, she's doing that scissor point of essentially opening the airway, and she's going to put the laparoscopic camera in. Here you'll see the airway channel coming up, almost there. Hold on, there you go, you see that? So this is now where Neil is going to annotate and say, this is the area where I want you to intubate, right? And this is done in real time, and we're thinking of not only how we could do this remotely and having people pointing at what is important from them, but most interestingly, how can we augment these models with additional scenarios? So how would this mannequin look if this was a burn victim, right? Could we overlay some, let's say, mixed reality material that would show burn features, and would that airway have this 3D model? And here she's putting the stylet. That stylet is basically putting the tube, and then you're removing it. And now you have just intubated, you just remove the wire, and that's it. So this is one of the examples of how mixed reality can be used on site. And this is another one that we're using it to teach right now students in medicine. One of the classes called PBL, problem-based learning. So think about it like a scenario discussion about a 45-year-old male complaining about back problems, I think that was. And you have a round table of clinicians, of educators brainstorming and saying, what kind of imaging, what kind of blood work, what kind of family medical history would you need to know to come up with a diagnosis? This is a study that we're doing right now in Qatar and here in New York, and we're trying to brainstorm in the metaverse how this could be useful. So it's a non-inferiority study between comparing face-to-face meetings, Zoom meetings, like the Hollywood scares that we're having right now, but also being there and brainstorming and, you know, the laser pointer and pointing out from anywhere and say, hey, I have this idea, I could show you right away and have that take place. So these are some examples of the doctors of the future, but also this, how we can leverage AI the correct way in to empower medicine. And this project I was telling Dr. Pelosi this before that we were getting very busy and passionate about. So there is an initiative here in the US with NIH called Bridge to AI, of how AI can act as a bridge and detecting disease at an unprecedented way. And our project focuses on how we can use voice as a biomarker of health for a plethora of conditions. So can it detect mood disorders such as depression? Can it detect diseases like cancers, like colorectal cancer? Can it help detect things such as Alzheimer's or pediatric cases like ASD, speech impediments, respiratory diseases, and so on? And can it be a screening tool? Can it be a treatment tool? How can we learn from people's voices? Sometimes people say, you know, you sound terrible, your voice seems to have something. And from a pathophysiology sense, think about it on how we're not using the most valuable biomarker, and we're treating people without using something that could be telling us a lot more about someone's health. So we talked about care, about research, about teaching, and the point, if I want to let you on like a closure point, is we're trying to change medicine, not just at Cornell, across the world. And the models have shifted of where medicine takes place, of how medicine is conducted. And what I hope I inspired you today to see is how artificial intelligence and the medical extended reality are actually the next frontier on changing that medicine. And in order to achieve this, it's not just technology. And I said in the beginning, it's not just AI, it's also the human factor. So for us, it's also how the future of medicine, whether it is clinicians that are becoming, the future of medicine, new doctors learning new skills, but also from a multi diverse background. My background, I'm not a clinician. I'm in the field of medicine, working in tandem with our clinicians. I'm a research scientist helping them achieve the best possible care. So how you envision embarking on this domain is very interesting, and we want more of your insight, and you are the future to help us shape that. Now, closing my lecture, it would be remiss not to mention people that have been mentor figures that have empowered me and given me the space to act in, but also all our students throughout the summer and throughout the years that have been responsible for the product that you see today. And it would be completely wrong if I didn't mention and credit their work on that. So closing on that and showing a little bit of our lab in 3D, stop sharing. We'll talk more about other opportunities, but perhaps at this point would be a good point to open for any questions. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was, very fascinating, of course. I particularly enjoyed, you breaking down the buzzwords for us, because there's been a lot of, different sort of terminology going around. And so it was really kind of, it was nice to actually, get a deeper understanding of all these different concepts, and you covered a lot of ground. Everything is, amazing that you're doing there. And, it's really exciting to kind of get a glimpse of what's going on in the States, because, in the States, you have the funding too. And with the NIH, your new grant, congratulations. That's also very exciting. And I've actually heard about this. This has been sort of on the news lately. It's sort of a very sort of hot subject right now about using voice as a biomarker. So we're really looking forward to seeing the results of that. So we'll open the discussion now and receive some questions from the students, or perhaps from, I see Professor Papadopoulou joined. If anyone wants to comment or have a question. No questions? Okay, well, while we're sort of thinking about it, maybe, I don't know, Professor Papadopoulou, are you there? Do you want, I'm sure you have lots of questions to ask. I don't know if you can use your microphone though, perhaps you can't. If anyone also wants to ask a question in the chat, that's also possible. So before, while we're waiting, if I can ask a question regarding sort of this new project. So you showed us, all the different partners involved, and as we know, science is a team sport. So, you have to coordinate all of the different centers. And so with Cornell, what is your role in this new project, the Bridge to AI?
A great question, and it takes a whole army to do team science, right? So in this effort for voice as a biomarker of health, there are 6 subgroups divided. So one focuses on ethics, right? AI is going to be definitely a very interesting way of using that information, and how can we do it in an equitable and ethically sourced way. So there's the ethics team, there's the standards team. How are we collecting that data, and how do we do it in a way that it scales? A lot of the times there are one-off projects that don't help pave the path of what is the new standards of how AI data sets should be formed. The third element, I think that's the core, is the data acquisition, where clinicians work in tandem with the participants or our patients to collect their voice and contribute to that. And there's the skills and workforce group that basically trains researchers on how to harness that data, how to use AI, how to come up with new models to treat. There's the teaming that glues all of them together, and the last that I'm leading, which has to do with the tools and the optimization module. So my team, the one that I lead here at Cornell, is responsible for building every single tool that helps us achieve all the previous goals. So for example, on voice, we're envisioning capturing voice both at the clinic, but also as we progress throughout the years, being able to have it on the simplicity of our phone, right? So we have a phone, it has tons of microphones, not just one, noise canceling, etc. How can we use it to not only collect it, but also give immediate feedback to people about potentially like a screening thing? The other element is in the cloud. How do we usher that information in a secure enclave that is not something that can be hacked? Because voice is a very important biomarker and something that we would characterize as patient health information that in the US, it's governed under HIPAA, right? So we want to ensure that the data that is retained does not get compromised and out in the wild. You wouldn't want to say, oh, this person is suffering from dementia. Maybe it would lead like an exposure of this patient's medical record. As a medical institution, we have to harbor and protect our the trust that patients have given us. But also in AI, how can we do this at a scale and empower every single researcher, you guys included, to be able to train a model without actually tapping on the data? So there is this element in AI called federated learning that allows you to train models while they are in different silos and aggregate the result to give you the model back, but never the actual data. So the challenges and the technical side on the tools is how can we use every bleeding edge element to basically have the cake and eat it too? And the goal of this study focuses on both US and Canada, so basically all the upper Americas, I would say, the North America, but also focuses on expanding. So from year 1 to year 2 to it's a 4-year goal on how do we reach the whole population and how can we create models, as I said in the beginning, that are equitable, that are ethically sourced, and clinicians know how the models are coming, and rather than just asking a GPT model to come up with a treatment, it has clinically validated background that we could feel comfortable using it in our practice.
Okay, wow, that's really exciting. So what is the ultimate goal? Like an app on the patient's phone? Or like how would it work? Like you talk about it being equitable too, so it would have to be something that is easily sorry. It's
So
something, yeah, something that's easily accessible and that eventually, as you said, can expand to the bigger, like to the whole population.
I think what you say is a great first start. So an app is just the beginning, right? The ability to communicate and open that channel in a more modern way. So rather than you going to the hospital is coming to you. The element at least that excites me and inspires like how we practice is how can not just us, but other clinicians, other researchers can train models on themselves. So we don't have all the answers. How can we make this data set available to track additional diseases as we progress in the future? So it's not going to be just one app. It's going to be myriads of models that are coming into to help things that might be relevant, for example, on, I don't know, like mood disorders, or things that are going to be later on available on sleep medicine, or all these different biomarkers that we were looking into to tap on that all this information was never collected in a clinical and equitable way.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Congratulations once again. Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Nadia.
Thank you. Thank you for the lecture, first of all. It's very fascinating stuff. I'm just interested to know about what the plan is to kind of integrate past doctors from older generations that are kind of used to a different system of practicing medicine. How are they going to integrate into this rapidly changing kind of AI metaverse kind of situation. Is there a plan to integrate, or are they going to have to retrain? That's all.
That's a great question, Nadia. And I would say there's two kind of facets, right? How do we train them to tap on AI and trust AI? And how do we train them on using the metaverse? And what I would say is what we saw, especially in the pandemic with how the metaverse is being used, clinicians never stop learning. There's always new information that they have to learn to put it in their practice. But we have to think also, what is the ask for them? Are we asking them to become proficient in computers? Are we asking them to learn a new programming language? Like, are they going to learn Python like in their mid-career so that they could train models? And is this realistic or not? I think the option is to have the computers come closer to us on how it understands them. Like, for example, we were talking about the voice prompts with PMTB. It was understanding how people speak and not how we should tell it on the AI. And through that facet, I would say AI has different channels of expressing itself. Should I type it in ChatGPT? Can it understand it with my voice? Can it understand intent by just observing how I do my practice? And I think the value would be, can this technology help me, for example, on AI, avoid any pitfalls? So maybe there is an article that just came out 5 minutes ago, and I haven't looked at PubMed since we started, let's say, the lecture. If there is something pertinent to my case, can it act as a net that says, hey, I think this might be very relevant to your case, and obviously allow the clinician to evaluate and assess and filter to make the determination. So there is work in terms of how we adapt to clinicians, but what we've seen throughout the years is if there is something that has increased value, you saw Dr. Andropoulos, she put all the headsets on without a second thought because it was adding value to her patients. So if we can hit that level of threshold, you will see surgeons wearing all these things such as magnifying lenses and all the heavy stuff that they go through during surgery, if it adds and changes their practice. So, for example, how do you empower a clinician in their mid-career in the ICUs to do that? You show them value by doing that. You're not just using tech for tech. And not all things are going to be immediately evident. For example, how you can use this in surgery might be like the golden chalice, right? The amazing thing that would revolutionize things. However, the accuracy of these devices is not perfected yet. So there are lower hills to climb. And the same thing with AI. We cannot expect it to immediately find the cure for everything, but we could walk through this journey together and help it learn and become better, right? The things that it could do today, maybe it doesn't know about what Hippocrates does, but maybe next week this never is an issue. So the key thing is that this is a continuum, and we want to empower as many clinicians as we can. Maybe day one, not all of them join, but as we progress, I think it's going to be inevitable. Like I was always having trouble convincing my parents on how they use technology. And the thing that made a lot more sense is when it was pertinent to communicate with others, right? So there's always something that empowers you or provides a better equivalent that not necessarily forces you, but gives you value into seeing that perspective. So maybe for some that it doesn't change their practice, they never use it. But the notion that I've been doing this for so many years, like, so why change it now? Because medicine can become better. Like traditionally, like you could see any chart on how we can improve. So there's always that need to provide better care. And as long as we keep losing patients, there's always going to be a need to do better and faster and increase our quality of life, not just our how many years we'll live.
I see. Yes. Thank you. You explained it very well.
Okay, I don't know. If we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap it up slowly. Before we do, there is a message from Professor Papadopoulou. Congratulations, Alexander. I do not have access to my microphone. I am impressed. 3 exclamation marks. So I think that sums up all of our sort of, impressions of, this very exciting field of medicine. I mean, it's exciting. And as you said, it's an interdisciplinary team. So you showed us, how, you all gather for, to discuss these, not only for teaching, but also for, actually examining the patient care and being able to provide optimal patient care. So it is really exciting. And, everyone has equally important roles in this. And it's also nice to see, where you started with an informatics degree and then there you are today, in biomedicine. So it's really exciting. And I think that you're a great sort of role model for our students. So thank you very much. If anybody wants to further discuss with Professor Cigares, I could provide his email address if that's also okay with him.
It's absolutely okay. And I would definitely say, now that you got a chance to connect, definitely use that opportunity. Shoot me an email if you have any follow-up questions. I think what I would be interested to know is also from your perspective, your fresh minds that are seeing how AI is being used. Are there any concerns? Like Nadia was saying before, how do I convince clinicians to use it? Are you concerned, like I am, about the ethics of this? How do we do this right? Potential misuses of such technology, right? There's tons to discuss and to fear, but like with any technology and like with any kind of advancement, I think we should be gatekeepers to make sure that this is in the service of humanity, in the sense, like I could see so many bad ways of misusing it and also so many good ways to provide and improve. I'd love to learn your perspective and basically from these things, what is the element that you find in medicine more fascinating, or on your journey here at Deree, what drives you and where do you want to go next, right? Do you want to use it as pre-med and go to medicine, or do you see yourself becoming a scientist? Do you see yourself going in the industry? I would love to hear your thoughts if you want to chat either today or perhaps you could reach out.
Would anyone like to share their thoughts? It's a great question, by the way. Anyone? Nadia?
Perhaps, yeah,
Okay.
perhaps you might know of some internship or research opportunities at the institution that you're affiliated with that you could share with us as students.
So we have every year a summer program, and we have been working with Dr. Polisidis and Dr. Papadopoulou to have 2 students this summer. There are projects that we're doing not just only with me, but with other colleagues. And I think, let me try to see if I could share this again. So these are some of the links to connect. I'll be sharing the slides so Dr. Polisidis can share this with you. For this summer, the opportunities for the internship program have closed, but I'd welcome you to reach out and try to learn more, but also reach out to Dr. Polisidis and Dr. Papadopoulou as a way of connecting perhaps for the next cohort. So there's multiple projects, some of them on my domain that are on AI and medical extended reality, but also others that tap on purely bioinformatics, genomics, and all these things that we had very little time to tap on today. So there's always research opportunities, just to point that out.
That's great. Yes. Thank you so much. We'll be waiting for the links.
Yeah, I'll share the slides and Professor Papadopoulou can also post them on the society web, on the society group platform on Blackboard, I think. So, okay, so I think then we can, anyone else want to contribute their ideas or thoughts? Otherwise, we'll close the session for today. Okay, well, thank you once again. You know, this is a great treat for us. And yeah, and we're really excited to see, you know, with our students how the internships will go as well. So thank you also for that opportunity. So take care, everyone. Have a good evening. Have a good afternoon. Alexa.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you a lot. Goodbye.